Hello and welcome to the Blessings in the Streets podcast. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and in studio with me today is a phenomenal woman. You are in for a treat this evening. She is not only a woman of God, she is a mother, a wife, an author, film producer, photographer, videographer, and guess what? She is family. This is my sister-in-law, a busy woman on the move, got a lot of things going on right now, impacting and changing the world in every way that she knows how. And she's been so gracious to take time out of her very busy schedule to sit in with us to share a little bit about her journey in hopes of inspiring and encouraging and uplifting those who might be going through challenges and adversities of life and just need a new perspective, a new way of thinking about how do I properly and in a healthy manner process those moments in time. So without any further delay, it's my privilege and my honor, and I'm so grateful that she's here. Ladies and gentlemen, my sister-in-law, Claudia Parker. Claudia, thank you so much for being on the show.
Wow, wonderful introduction. Oh, I feel so humbled. Thank you so much. Yes, this is my brother-in-law. Absolutely love him. Super excited to be on his platform, and I hope that we will impart something that is edifying to those that are listening.
Well, I'm already claiming that victory right now. That this podcast episode is going to definitely bless somebody, including myself. So I'm excited to jump in. And with that said, before we do, of course, get into our segments for this evening, I do want to give you an opportunity to just kind of introduce yourself to our audience. Who you are, where you're from, what you do. Kind of give them a little taste of who is Claudia Parker.
Yeah, so Claudia Parker is from Terre Haute, Indiana. I've lived in Chicago with my husband of 21 years and our two daughters. Danae is 16, Rhonda Renee is 13. And I am a photographer. I am an author and a filmmaker. I primarily service nonprofits, mostly in school districts. So my photography and video production is commercial based. So there are instances where somebody might snag on me to do a special event, if you will, that's not within school districts or nonprofits, but primarily I serve school districts and religious organizations. A few law firms are my clients, but primarily all of my work is commercial.
That is awesome. That is awesome, and you really can't put into words the level of work and the commitment that Claudia puts into everything that she does. That's one of the things that I've oftentimes shared with her sister, my wife, about that I admire about you the most. And I don't even know if I've personally even shared this with you. Is I love your drive and your initiative. Like when you lock in on wanting to do something, you go all in. And I mean, it could be something you have never done before, and in a blink of an eye, you are like a master of it. It's just incredible. And so your work ethic and your dedication to what you do, in addition to again being a mom and a wife as well, I just love that about you. And so I'm
Thank
I'm
you.
excited to delve a little bit more into you and your story. I know quite a bit about you, but there's a lot I don't know about you. So I'm excited for what's in store for this evening. And again, I'm confident that many will be blessed and tuning in and checking you out. So, with that said, let's jump right into this.
Okay.
With any journey in life, I'm a firm believer that in order for you to fully capture the essence of one's journey, it's always important that you go back to the beginning of where it all starts. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to kind of take it back in the beginning. So some people may be checking out this episode and they don't know anything about Terre Haute, Indiana, what that life is like, or anything of that nature. So we're gonna help walk them through that. So if you would reflect back in your childhood coming up, Terre Haute, Indiana, if you would kind of tell us what was it like for you growing up, fond memories that you have about growing up, as well as if there was any challenges that you perhaps had to deal with in growing up. If you feel free to share those as well, just kind of give us the foundational basis, the beginning of what your journey looked like as you were coming up.
Woo. Okay, so um I come from a single parent household. I have five siblings. There's Angel, Nadia, Teresa, and Andrew on my mom's side. I guess I'm wrong in my number. That's so bad. And then I have Icy and Wesley. And then there's even another brother named Anthony that I've never met. So there's a lot of siblings, a lot of love, no dad in my life. My father and I have been estranged for pretty much my entire life, with the exception of one summer where he kidnapped me. I say that lightheartedly because it's funny now that I think back. It just seems so ridiculous. But yeah, that's really what happened. I was kidnapped by my dad.
Wow. Now you know you're gonna have to elaborate a little bit on exactly what do you mean when my dad kidnapped me. Exactly, kind of tap into that a little bit more for me if you would.
Sure. So, all right. So, a little bit of peeling back the onion. Okay. My mother was a teenage mom. She had me at 17. My father was 5 years her senior, which meant there was some statutory rape going on there. But it was they had a consensual relationship. He wasn't a pedophile. I will just be clear on that. Um, but he was also in another relationship with my sister, Icy, your wife's mother, and theirs was the more serious relationship. My father, I truly believe, loved Renee with his whole heart, but he was just mannish. And um, my mom was young, and somehow I guess my mom was the side piece, I think. So she ends up pregnant. But my mother, at 17, having me, already had uh, a child, my older sister, Teresa, which meant she was pregnant at 14.
Mhm.
So she is a teenage mom with she's getting ready to give birth to me at this point. And so she tried to have my grandmother let her come home. But my grandmother was married to a man that was not my grandfather. And he was like, you know what? She's not bringing another child in this household. So somebody else is going to have to take her. So that was me. The unborn baby could not come home from the hospital with my mom because she lived in the household with my grandmother's husband's house. And he said, you're not bringing another baby up in here. So my mom goes to my dad and says, can you take Claudia just temporarily until I can get my own place? So my dad agrees to take me, this newborn baby, and take care of me until my mom could get up on her feet. But it took my mom a whole year before she was able to get her own place. Well, by then, my dad had been the primary caretaker of me for an entire year with his then girlfriend, who became my stepmother, Renee. And so at the time when my mom tried to come back and get me, all bets were off. My dad was like, "No, forget it. I'm the primary parent now. I'm not going to just give her back to you." And quite frankly, I agree with him. I don't think I would have given me over either. But my mom and my grandmother jumped my dad and
Mm.
literally took me back from him. It was the big thing. They all went to jail. It was drama. Um, but in the end, my mom, because my dad didn't know his parental rights and they had never signed anything. So in the end, my mom was the one that got me back. So my dad was very bitter over that for many years. So he left Terre Haute and he moved to Milwaukee, and he was so angry with my mom and my grandmother. That's the reason why he was estranged from me, because he despised them so much that it actually hindered him from being able to have a connection with me. It wasn't until age 11, he came back to Terre Haute and asked my mom if he could take me for the summer for a visit. And my mom said, absolutely not. Well, a child, my whole life, always longed for a dad, wanted to have a relationship with my dad. So I got really upset with my mom and said, you can't keep me from him. He wants to be with me. I've longed for a dad my whole life. So if you don't let me go with him, I'm never talking to you again. So she didn't want to lose me. So she consented against her own will, or her own better judgment, I should say. And she let me go. I was only supposed to go for 2 months. At the end of and the time that I had with him was good. He was a good dad to me within the time frame that I went. He spent a lot of quality time with me. We had a lot of great long conversations. We were bonding. And, I really was enjoying him. But I was ready to come back home. I was at the end of that 2 months, I was like, okay, this has been fun. And now I'm ready to go home. And when it was every time I would bring up that, okay, Dad, when are you taking me home? He became very elusive. I found out that his entire intention was to steal me back,
Mm.
get get back at my mom and my grandma from stealing me from him. And he also didn't want to pay child support. That was a factor. He was paying child support. I was living with my grandma at the time, and he was paying child support to my mom. He didn't like that. He's like, if she's not even taking care of you, why am I paying child support to her?
Mm.
So therefore, you can just come and live with me. And again, as an adult, I kind of understand his point there as well. Um, but I didn't want to live with him, and I certainly didn't want uh, my right to decide which parent I wanted to stay with to be taken away from me. So he just literally was never going to bring me home. And then when I was saying, "Okay, Dad, like this isn't funny anymore. Like I want to go home." Then he started to be mean because he didn't. I perceived he couldn't handle the rejection of
Mm-hmm.
me telling him that I didn't want to live with him. Um, so I think his way of being able to cope with the fact that I was saying I didn't choose him to stay with caused him to be angry. And so that's when he started to mistreat me.
Wow. Wow. So how long past the 2 months did he actually keep you before you ultimately were able to make your way back home?
I just remember them, when I say them, he and his wife, I remember them taking me to get testing to be in the Milwaukee school system.
Mm.
And I remember like them filling out the paperwork and preparing to put me in school. I want to say it was maybe a week, 1 week before school started for them, when my mom and my grandma and my aunt Susie came and literally stole me back.
Wow.
Yeah, it's some rough riders in my family.
That is definitely a unique situation. But I guess as you stated, I could see on both ends, the concerns, the rationalizations. But at the end of the day, as you stated, it's always unfortunate when a kid is sort of tugged in between, the two parents that are, they're no longer together. They're at odds with one another for a variety of different reasons, and ultimately the child suffers because, as you stated, you've been estranged from your dad, all these years, and much of it had to do with this transcending moment that takes place. And and it's unfortunate because, as you stated, nobody, you craved as a kid, wanting that bond, wanting that relationship with your dad, and then to now know what you've accomplished in life, and again, mom, wife, beautiful daughters, you're doing all kind of stuff. What dad wouldn't want to celebrate and be a part of that? And for him to not be able to experience it in that way, and you all not have that again, that bond that you desire to have. I can only imagine. I won't say I totally understand because I don't, but I can, I can only imagine, how strenuous that might be, and maybe to a certain degree heartbreaking, because you want, you want that bond, you want that relationship, you want your daughters to know granddad,
Hmm.
and they don't have that experience like that. They don't connect with him like that. So that's that's pretty impactful, and I appreciate your transparency and sharing that. I now what I do identify with, of course, is obviously the whole single parent thing. Having grown up single parent household myself, my mom had me as a teen, and also my dad, was a married man when my mom met him. She was young, he was older, so he had his own family going on. So I also have siblings as well who I know who they are, but we don't have uh, that close relationship. I was only really close to one of those siblings coming up, and oddly enough, it just so happens that the sibling that I was closest to, we have the same name sister wise. My sister Teresa
Mm.
was the one I was closest to, and of course, you have a sister named Teresa. So I thought that's pretty cool. The coincidence of that
Right.
as well. So totally identify with that, but clearly I should say, let this be a lesson to those who are tuning in, is that, even in the craziest, most extreme odds and circumstances of life, um, just because you go through those things doesn't mean that, life itself is doomed. Life itself has no hope or no future to it. You are a living and walking testimony of proving that theory wrong. And so, I want people to, of course, take away from that it doesn't automatically just mean that it's all a wrap and then there's no hope, there's no going forth, there's no successes or dreams to realize as a result of those circumstances, because clearly that wasn't the case for you. So again, I appreciate you giving us that glimpse of, coming up and what that challenging situation was like for you, and just thankful to God that you were able to persevere in spite of all of the chaos, if you will, that was going on at that time. So Claudia, I'm curious to know, of course, well, I should say, as we, come into our adulthood, regardless of how things came about growing up, one of the things that happens over time, we go through a lot of experiences, and those experiences, of course, includes moments of challenges and adversity and things of that nature. But every now and then, we encounter a situation that hits a little bit different. It's not our traditional problem that I got to deal with. It's not our traditional adversity moment I got to deal with. This hits in a way that we're actually questioning, we're doubting, like, how am I going to get through this? This is overwhelming. This is just too much. I don't know, God, how I'm going to make it through this. I have no solution, no answer for this. If you would, tell us about a time when you found yourself in that type of situation where you didn't see a way out. You didn't know how you were going to overcome this moment of adversity. If you would kind of walk us through that and let us know eventually, what was that ultimate breakthrough moment where you began to see the light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak, of being able to come up out of that particular situation. What was that? What would that time be for you that you would like to share?
You know what? I think I'm probably in it. I think I'm probably in it right
Oh,
now.
okay.
But it's a it there's ebbs and flows to coping. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
My husband and I, who I indicated have been married for 21 years, we waited to have kids. We were married for 5 years when we had our first daughter, Danae, who was 16. Um, and then I was completely content because I was 35 at the time that I had Danae. So because, we had pursued our careers and gotten our education, I was completely content with just one child. And then my husband and my older daughter lobbied for that second kid. They were like, please. Danae wanted a sibling, Don wanted a son. So I was like, listen, Danae was a desire. Like I really wanted, to have that first child. I called Rhonda Renee a decision. Like Danae was a desire, Rhonda Renee was a decision. Okay, we're gonna do one more. That's it. So Rhonda Renee came, I was 38. And so that was pushing the like high risk. according to the my obstetrician. And I remember him saying, like, okay, we're going to do this test and this test and this test, you know. And I just was like, that's not necessary. He was like, well, don't you want to test for, you know, possibility of this or that? And I was like, nope, God's will is God's will. Um, I don't even want to know. I don't need to know in advance if, you know, I'm going to have a child with some type of health problem or disability. I'm just going to move forward and whatever comes. And I said that not realizing that that would become my reality. And I would not have made a different decision. I want to be very clear about that. I would not have made a different decision had I known prior to giving birth. Immediately upon having Rhonda Renee, we recognized that something was different about her. I did have a very turbulent birth and delivery. She was lodged, and coming through the birth canal, she got lodged. And so they were doing everything they could to get her out, and they couldn't get her out. Her oxygen, she started to lose oxygen. So I was rushed into an emergency C-section. And when she was delivered, it was like chaos and panic because I guess to everybody else, she didn't look like she was breathing. I couldn't see her because I was kind of like behind the curtain. Um, they started working on her like right away. My husband will tell that he's never been more afraid in his life than what he was because he could see. Um, but she was in the NICU, but it was a week, and then she got to come home with me. So I thought, okay, that was it. We got through it, right?
Mm-hmm.
She's fine now. She's not in the hospital. At first she wasn't breathing. They were trying to intubate her, but then she wouldn't even take the intubation. They couldn't even get it in. She ended up breathing on her own. She had oxygen for maybe one day. She had a little bit of jaundice, but she got through it. And we went home from the hospital, and I thought, okay, we're fine. But then I noticed like it was very difficult for me to be able to soothe her in the manner that I could my older daughter. And, you know, I thought this is kind of odd. Like everything I'm trying to do, swaddling her and giving her a warm bath or whether she just seems to hate it. Like I just thought, wow, we're not connecting very well. Maybe it's because I had a C-section. I couldn't nurse her right away. I'm not coming up with all these things in my head as to the reason. And I remember like within like a couple of weeks, I was like nursing her and playing with her fingers. And I recognized like something was odd with one of her fingers. Like it seemed like her hand wasn't fully extending. And, you know, the doctor's like, what are you talking about? All little babies like keep their hands kind of closed. And I'm like, yeah, no, something's off with her hands. Like it seems webbed, like it can't open. Um, so turns out this inability to soothe her and this webbed finger and some of the challenges and awkwardness that I was noticing about her ended up being a lifelong disability called FOXP1 syndrome. She was diagnosed at the age of 3, and we have been discovering and navigating through the characteristics of this disability for 10 years.
Mm. And what is it, I guess in layman's terms as best as you can describe it, what is Fox1 syndrome? What does it do
Yeah.
to the
So FOXP1 syndrome is a mutation. It happened at conception.
Mhm.
And that was very important for me to know in the discovery process because, you know, whenever something is going on with your child, you always wonder, was it something I did? You know,
Mhm.
did I eat the soft cheese when I was pregnant? You know, what caused this, right? Um, but we had a genetics test called whole exome sequencing, whole as in WHOLE exome, exome, whole
Mm.
exome sequencing. It is a DNA test that analyzed my DNA, my husband's and hers, by 12 different geneticists at the Baylor College of Medicine. At the time that we had the test, when she was 3, that test, just that one genetics test, was $10,000.
Oh, wow.
And most insurance companies will not cover it. My husband was a school principal at the time, so he had excellent benefits. But even his insurance would not have covered it had we not had a series of other genetics tests that kept coming back normal. So
Hmm.
if you have one genetics test and it comes back normal, we're like, well, clearly something is abnormal here. So then you get the justification to do the next level and the next level. And as each one came back normal, we got the approval to then keep testing until we got to the whole exome sequencing genetics testing. And even with that, it's only a 50% finding. So you got to pay $10,000 to have a genetics test come back and not had a finding. So that's the heartbreaking part. People probably still wouldn't know. In our case, we did get a finding and it was confirmed that she has FOXP1 syndrome. So there are 12 different characteristics of adults and children with FOXP1 syndrome. Autism is a characteristic of Rhonda Renee's FOXP1 syndrome, but it is sometimes it's easier for us to just say, oh, she's autistic, but it's FOXP1 syndrome that's causing the autism.
Hmm.
It's a characteristic of it. She has childhood apraxia of speech. She has a sensory disorder. She has a behavioral disorder. She has a little bit of attention deficit disorder. All of these are characteristics of FOXP1 syndrome, but each different characteristics has to be handled in a different manner. The sensory disorder that causes her to need vestibular input. That means in order for her brain to regulate itself, she has to get vestibular movement, running, jumping, spinning, swinging. um she used to have a big wheel and she would need to pop the curb. She needs the impact. And what those things do, that vestibular input that she's seeking, it stops like the craziness that's happening in her
Hmm.
brain. When she gets enough of that input that she's seeking, then she can actually be calm and she can sit down. But for a person who maybe from the outside looking in and they don't understand what a disability looks like, they see a kid and they just think, oh, they're bad. Sit down. I'm going to hit you. I'm going to spank you. I'm going to whoop you. You're acting out. Sit down, sit down, sit down. You might not know that that kid has a sensory disorder and they don't know how to sit down. They can't sit down until they get that vestibular input that their brain is seeking before they can calm themselves.
Wow. Wow. And again, I hadn't, of course, I'd heard the term, but I hadn't gotten this level of explanation before. I appreciate you breaking that down. Wow, it's that's a big undertaking. So you take all of these different tests and you begin to figure out, okay, this is basically something that happens. You said it happens at conception is when this goes down. So getting that news, like, what's how are you processing that between you and Don? How are you like thinking through this? Were you blaming yourselves for this? Like, how was the mental of it all? Just you know in dealing with all this, finding this information out and understanding that the complexities of it. What was that like for both you and your husband, Don? I'm calling him Don because I know Don.
Yeah, yeah,
Her
yeah, yeah.
husband, his name is Don. What was that like? What was those conversations like about what did we get into? I mean, it wasn't your fault, but like
Right.
this is our new reality. Like, what's up with this? What was that conversation like?
Yeah, so I think for me, like when we first got the diagnosis, I think I was in shock.
Hmm.
Um because I am very driven, very goal oriented. I am results oriented. I know if you do this action, then this is the result. But when you have a child with a disability, you could do this action all day long and you're not going to get that result. So the idea that I had in my mind on what my family was going to look like completely changed. In my mind, like, okay, the normal nucleus family, we're going to rear them up and we're going to have them in all these activities and we're going to, you know, pour into them academically and give them the potential to be able to live life to the fullest so that they will be productive, law abiding citizens that provide a positive contribution to society.
Hmm.
And we want them to be healthy and happy people, right? That's the parents' outlook for their children. Um, I did not anticipate that we would have a child that would not be able to fully communicate with us, that she would require us being her caregivers for the rest of her life. So after I got over the shock of it, um I was sad. I was so sad. I remember I would be pushing her in the grocery cart down the aisles of the store and I would just cry. And I would look at her cute little beautiful face because to see her, she looks like a typically developed child
Hmm.
until you make observations of her and then you hear her try to communicate and then you recognize like, oh, okay, this child has a disability. But just to see a photograph of her, you would not know. Um, so I would look at her face and I would just say, I'm so sorry. Like I felt sorry for the life that I thought she was gonna miss. Man, that kid wakes up with joy every day. For her, it's a great day to be Rhonda Renee.
Right. And I'm glad you pointed that out because, again, obviously our listeners haven't had an opportunity to, personally meet her. But to your point, if you ever, for anybody who would ever have the opportunity to meet Rhonda Renee in person, as you stated, every bit of her, unless you just like really focusing and paying attention that perhaps there's something that's different. Generally speaking, she's just a fun loving kid. I mean, you could feel that energy from her that she's just a lovable, just kid to be around. I mean, it's like, you can't help but to not like her, and like you said, the condition that she has, I mean, not her fault, but it's also refreshing to know, and it really serves as a reminder that, if she can be in the state of condition that she's in and wake up every morning with joy, with love, with happiness, with energy, then what's our problem? we we
Right.
quote unquote are in all of our right capacities. Everything
Yeah.
functionally works right. We have homes, we have cars, we have careers, we got all of the stuff, but yet so oftentimes we complain about, I don't have this and I don't have that and I wish this and I wish that. So unappreciative, so ungrateful. But then you have this child, innocent child, loving and living life like like you the ones who got a problem, not me. Like, I mean, it's almost, that's her energy speaks to that. Like, we're the
Right.
one with the problem, not, and so, and I also like the fact that you pointed out, a characteristic of yourself, which I totally agree. You're very results oriented, and I made mention of that about you lock in what you're gonna do, and it's boom, 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 and so as I'm sitting through hearing this story, and I'm going to ask you directly the question, there has to be a part of it where at some point you're having this conversation, with God, like, and I'm curious to know even to that, like, you know, what was that conversation even like for you when you and God talk, because I'm sure, and I think a lot of people need to know, even believers, it's okay to have an attitude with God. It's okay to feel some kind of way. Like, did I do something to you? Why did I deserve this? What does all of this mean? I have my own thought to this. I mean, when I think about you saying I'm very regiment oriented, goal oriented, boom, 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 boom. I believe sometimes, for God to get us out of our comfort zones, He has to throw something our way that disrupts what we're used to doing, what we're accustomed to doing. And for you, it came by way of your daughter, not
Hmm.
to hurt you, not to harm you, not to attack you, but to create an opportunity. And I think that's the key word, an opportunity for you and for Don to get closer to him. Because now I gave you a situation that you just couldn't sit down and crunch the numbers and do the paperwork and make it right. You're forced to be more dependent upon him, which is not a bad thing. We encourage anybody to be dependent upon God because he has all the answers. There's no problem that's too big, no challenge that's too great for him. And so I look at a situation like this when I'm take the emotions out of it and say, why this? Was there something I'm supposed to glean from this? And I'm sure you probably have some things that you've reflected on. But I am curious, what was that initial conversation for you, talking to God for the first time about, what's up with this? Why my child? Of all the children that you could impart this on, why mine? Why? And lifelong. I mean, you're making us permanent caregivers. The idea when you think about your kids, like they're supposed to be taking care of us when we get up and old and broke down and can't move around no more. And now you're asking me to and my husband to do this. What was that process like for you?
Yeah. Okay. So when I first went to God about it, right? Okay. So let me just say, I have a very close relationship with the Lord. I have been saved since my very early 20s, and you know, I locked in. This is absolutely no disrespect to any man of God that leads a religious organization. However, I grew up in a church that was very Pentecostal and was fire and brimstone, and you was going to hell for every conceivable thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, it caused me as a young adult to feel some kind of way about the religious ways and the yeah, I guess the best way to put it is that I did not want to be sanctioned, if you will. You're required to do this. So I made it my business to get as close to God with understanding the word and being able to interpret it through the Holy Spirit that dwells within me, and that first, and then the person or persons within the religious organization that I would serve in second. Does that make sense at all?
Yes.
So as a result of my own intimacy with God, it doesn't matter who's in the pulpit, whether they are upright and holy or whether they falter into some type of sin. It doesn't change my walk because my following is unto the Lord and not to the individual.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So when I went to God, I didn't go to anybody at the church for counseling. I went to God and was like, what is happening? Like, clearly, I have had a very difficult upbringing, because there's too many things that have happened in my life for us to even talk about on your show. But I've dealt with blow after blow after blow after blow. So I'm very resilient in being able to handle difficult situations and bad things. I can handle it. I got some grit.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, I feel like, okay, we're changing the tide, and there's a different trajectory to my life now, and then my children and my life is going to be completely different than what it has been. So I thought we were, the dog days are over.
Mm-hmm.
So what's this? Um, God told me to embrace the gift. I was like, you are kidding me. So you mean we ain't gonna take her up to the altar and have him pray over her? You ain't gonna anoint her. You ain't gonna. take me to Benny Hinn or something, like find a conference, go and juice her up. Like you're not gonna heal her. You're telling me to embrace it. That's what I got. Embrace the gift of having a special needs child. And that put me into a complete emotional meltdown again because I was like, wow. So this is what we're doing. We're embracing it. We're not changing it. We're not fixing it. What I learned in about embracing it was that helped me to love her for who she was.
Hmm.
Because if I'm looking at my child and I constantly want her to be different, then I'm not accepting her for who she is. And that would have been to the detriment of Rhonda Renee. In addition to that, choosing to embrace the gift of having a child with a disability taught me more patience, empathy, advocacy. I have spoken on the House floor in Springfield advocating for not just my child, but people all across the state of Illinois as a result of having her. I would not have done that had I not had a plight in the
Hmm.
fight. I joined the school board and did almost 6 years as an advocate on the school board for children. I have, I was a journalist for the newspaper and helped to, tell stories of other people who, whether they were children or adults with disability, to help to tell their stories so that people can understand and have compassion for these individuals around them that have very unique abilities. So
And,
it has been a gift because I've grown as a person. My family has grown. And recently, I even created my first short film about our family's experience navigating FOXP1 syndrome. So it has been a blessing. I didn't see it as a blessing initially. We have a lot of hard days. We're not through it. Like I said, like we're still experiencing it. Rhonda Renee she is able to communicate in short sentences, but she still has a language disorder. So she's loud a lot. We wake up to banging and slamming doors because she needs the vibration of something that's reverberating in order to help her. So there's many times where it feels like we have an infant in the household because we're getting woke up in the middle of the night. She needs constant attention and constant care. It's exhausting at times. So it's not, yay, we've embraced it and God is so good. Days are still really hard,
mhm.
but we manage it with His grace.
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, I just want to highlight. I appreciate your transparency in this. This is a very challenging and difficult conversation to have, but I think it brings forth a great deal of light on a subject that we need to talk about. Not so much the syndrome itself, but just loving people unconditionally, accepting them for all of their pluses and minuses, their shortcomings, their frailties, all of those things. And I love the fact that you shared about how God had to remind you, or to impart in you, I should say, that this is a gift. And that's what you're supposed to do with this. She's not to be fixed. She's just like she's supposed to be. She's not to be modified, tweaked, sensationalized, or anything of that nature. She is exactly the way that she needs to be. And I believe in many ways that Rhonda Renee was necessary in order to catapult you into your purpose that God
Yeah.
had for you. It was like it was not about were you not smart enough or capable enough, but many of us walk around with all kind of intelligence and know-hows or whatever, but we just don't know where we're supposed to centralize that, where we're supposed to direct our efforts and our attention. And Rhonda Renee was that gift for you and to the world to help you be a blessing to not only for yourself but to be a blessing to other people in a variety of different arenas. And it's revealed itself, and I think there's still more that's going to come up out of that. And in the meantime, um as you stated, God's grace has been you know, beyond words, beyond measure. Because you're supposed to be outside your mind right now. You supposed to be you and Don supposed to be losing it. I mean, because something like this could be not only just strenuous on the individual, it can take a toll on a marriage. It could take toll on your finances, but God has blessed you. He's graced you. You know, I mean, it's not to put all your business out in the streets or anything like that, but you guys are doing okay. And it's not because you're multimillionaires or anything like that. God has handled the money. He's handled your peace of mind. He's handled your heart. He's allowed you to still stay the close couple that you are. You've gotten stronger through the midst of the storm. I mean, this is the beauty of the storms when it comes from God, because he doesn't allow storms to come our way to destroy us. It's never about that. The enemy wants the storms to destroy us, but when God is involved, which he's at the head of your life, ahead of your marriage, ahead of your family, it plays out different. There's an alternate ending to that. Like it used to be back in the day with the old school DVDs when they have the alternate ending. That's the God's ending, is the alternate ending versus the world ending, how this was supposed to play out. So um I appreciate just your whole commitment to the process, and it's authentic, it's genuine, it's not exploitive, it's not, you're not abusing or mistreating her. You pour into her just as much as you pour into your other daughter, who came out perfectly healthy, and that's a beautiful thing. And to that point, I did have a quick question on that. What was that conversation like with you, you and Don, in terms of talking to Danae about, hey, this is your sister, but she's different. She's got some unique. What was that conversation like, and how did Danae receive it?
Oh, wow. Okay, so 100% Danae, I, I think her purpose was revealed as a result of having a sister with a disability, because she realized very early that, if you are sick, you get more attention, because we were constantly at the doctor. We were in, and therapists were in and out, and they would bring in, a lot of times when you're doing IQ evaluations or even therapy evaluations, or even the treatment, it looks like toys.
Hmm.
That's how you provide the treatment for the child. So Danae would want to grab the bucket of toys and play, and we would say, "No, no, that's for Rhonda Renee. That's for her therapy." And Danae was just like, "Why can't I get therapy?
Right.
What's going on here? Why is everything for Rhonda?" So she decides, I think then something needs to be wrong with me. So she started to have she started to be a little hypochondriac. But the things that she would tell me was going on with her would be things that I could not detect on my own without taking her to a medical professional. She would say something like, "Oh, I feel like my heart isn't beating right." Well, she's like 4. So what am I going to do with that? Of course, I got to run her off to the pediatrician so we can make sure her heart isn't skipping a beat or something. So I say to the pediatrician, "This is what she's saying," and I'm alarmed. Uh, Perhaps we could maybe try that placebo pill to see if maybe that could work. And the pediatrician's like, "Oh, yeah, I think that's a great idea. Let's give her the placebo pill." "Okay, Donna, we're going to put you on this medication and, try this for a couple days and let me see how it goes." And Donna is like, "Oh, yeah, I feel much better." So that's how we found out. That's how we found out she was just pulling our legs. So that made me mad. I was like, "Okay, God, now this is not going to work because we're paying copays. I'm having to rearrange nap schedules and packing up 2 kids and running off to the doctor. I'm already overwhelmed with what I'm dealing with, and now she want to play sick? Like, no, this is not going to work for me." And so the Holy Spirit reveals to me, like, take all that drama and use it. And I'm like, "What? Like, how do I use it?" Like, be creative, figure it out. So I come up with, okay, we listen to a lot of different devotions, right? In between Sundays, we want to feed our spirits. So it was never a shortage of different ministers that might be on our television or on the computer at the time. So Danae thought it was funny to kind of mimic whoever was on the TV screen, whether it was Joyce Meyer or Joel Osteen, TD Jakes, Priscilla Shire, it was, you name it, she would try to like mimic them from the pulpit. So I thought that's kind of funny. I think what I'm gonna do is put all her teddy bears and baby dolls and Barbies, and I'm gonna make a congregation, and I'm gonna let Danae do a little sermon as if she's the
Mhm.
pastor, since she likes to mimic the pastors. And I recorded it and put it on YouTube, and it went viral. We called her the children's church with the preschool pastor.
Mhm.
And that ended up creating her going on a speaking circuit to all these different churches, and she would do youth programs and conventions, and that transferred into youth drama ministry, and then we went into community theater, and then she ended up getting an agent for a talent agent, and now she's even doing oratorical society through the Rainbow Push Correlation with Reverend Jesse Jackson's organization. So it was difficult for her to be able to handle it initially, but once she started to see who she was and the gifts that she possessed, now she is nothing more than a second mom to Rhonda Renee. She is so nurturing and loving and caring, and I promise to God, my husband and I need Danae to help us take care of Rhonda, because she's so good with her that the three of us know that Rhonda Renee's needs will always be met, because she has three people. She got three parents as opposed to two.
That is just amazing. And and I know I've been focusing a lot on how much of a gift she's been to you directly in terms of launching you into your purpose. But to your point, um she's done the same for Danae, and she's also done the same for Don. I mean, you all are operating in lanes where you're pouring into the lives of other people,
Yeah.
and much of that has to be credited to the presence of Rhonda Renee. What it brought out of you, your outlets, your creativities, your ways of just being refreshed. You're getting refreshed by refreshing others in your own respective lanes. And so again, what a powerful gift. That's why God was very intentional with you in saying, "There's nothing to fix. She's exactly like she's supposed to be, and there's a purpose for you. There's a purpose for Danae. There's a purpose for Don, and everybody's going to benefit in their own respective lanes in their own respective manners. And guess who you're gonna be able to look to? The gift that I gave you to make it all happen. So I'm gonna give God the credit for it all, but I got this blessing right in the house. Yeah, we have our days, we have our challenges, but I'm sure the blessings, her presence, her love, her joy, her happiness far outweighs those challenging moments. So this is beautiful. I'm really enjoying this conversation and kind of putting all the pieces together and how this plays out. And I'm sure our listeners are taking it all in as well, because this is not an easy journey. This is not an easy uh, road to travel, but we all have our storms. We all have our walks. God never promises us that it's always going to be smooth sailing and easy going, but He does promise that He'll be with us. We don't have to do
Yes.
this thing alone. It's
Mm-hmm.
not like we're out here by ourselves. Just trying to figure it out with no help, no support, no encouragement, no comforting or anything of that nature. And that's what makes God so special, being who He is all by Himself. So that's awesome. So Claudia, I'm curious, when you're facing adversity, whether it's a moment of, hey, it's been a rough day with Rhonda Renee, she's kind of giving us, she doesn't work this today, or just maybe it's just something else that's going on that's perplexing, that's a problem, it's an issue or something that you got to deal with. What do you like to do that just sort of helps you as you're facing those challenges, again, whether they be major or minor, what do you like to do? What's your regimen that you like to go through that kind of helps you keep a level head as you process and work your way through how to deal with whatever that moment of adversity may be on any given day?
Oh, right. So my favorite thing to do to decompress
Hmm.
outside of my, my spiritual tools, which is, doing a daily devotion, and I work out on a regular basis. That's important to me. My mom died of heart disease, so I keep a very healthy lifestyle, and I really focus on my physical health, because if I'm able to prevent a premature death as a result of an action that I can take, I want to do that, because I know how heartbreaking it was for me to lose my mom at an early age. And I certainly never want my children to experience that. So, but my being creative is in telling stories. So I have a web series called 5 Minutes of Faith, where I sit down and talk to people like you're talking to me.
Hmm.
Then I take their stories and I create 5 minute documentaries of their testimonies. So it's my outlet. It's something that I do on a regular basis that I can't not do. Like if
Hmm.
you said to me, you can't take pictures anymore, you can't go do video production in the school districts that you service anymore, I would be like, okay, I guess that's season for that is over. But if you said you can't tell people's testimonies, 5 minutes of faith has to go away, I can't not do it. I absolutely have to do it. That is my gift back to the Lord, to be able to glorify him through our stories. And I am edified and strengthened whenever I feel like I'm, vacillating in my own sorrows for the day. And then someone sits down with me and I hear their testimony. I think, well, shoot, let me get myself together, because I didn't go through that. And then furthermore, if God brought you through that, then I can certainly get through this.
Right.
It's a refreshing experience to be able to help people share their stories in a manner that not only takes you through what they've gone through, but then allows you to see how they've come out.
Hmm. I love that, and again, I've of course had the pleasure of being on your 5 Minutes of Faith series, and it was very rewarding experience. And of course, my story highlighted, my relationship with my mom and ultimate
Mhm.
passing, and what that whole experience was like. And as you stated, there's something about doing that type of work. I mean, I'm in my early stages, obviously, of here with doing my podcast, and I'm with you. I totally identify with what you just said. It's like, now that I'm doing I've always done what I've been doing, just never in a podcast platform. I've always been a person who, has, been gifted to comfort people, to pour into people, to come alongside people. It's part of my spiritual gifting. But, to now have a formal platform to do it with, I'm just like you. It's like it's like food to me. It's like I gotta have it. It's like breathing. And I understand, sometimes, you're trying to strike that balance between pouring into other people and making sure you don't neglect the family in the meantime. It's like, you got another recording, you got another recording. And I'm like, and sometimes I even have to have those conversations sometimes with the family. It's like, you don't understand. This is a good problem to have. I know it may seem like it takes a lot of my time, but I've asked a bunch of people when I came up with my list, and most of them said yes, to my surprise.
Mhm.
They want to do this, even though the majority of them have never done this before. And
Mm.
they're ready to trust me with their stories, with their journeys on my platform. What an honor. What a
It
privilege.
is.
And like you said, as they're telling their stories, it's not just me again being all up in their business and finding out the juice and the tea, but it's like, I'm able to not only, affirm what they've been through and see their journey, see their overcoming of it, but it blesses me when I tell people, I've been blessed by your story. I've been blessed by your story. It's not just something that just words out of my mouth. I'm getting nuggets every time I have somebody share their story with me. And I'm hoping that I'm imparting the same when I give my thoughts and my feedback to their story, helping them to make sense of why they've gone through what they've gone through, things of that nature. So yeah, I totally relate to you on that. And it's our way of giving back to God, advancing his kingdom, coming alongside people, giving them an opportunity to just release. Some people just needed that space to release, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
5 minutes to do it or whether it's an hour long to do it. It gave me an opportunity to release. It's like therapy for some people, you know. So it's a beautiful thing to be a part of, and I wouldn't change it for the world. And I know I feel you. You don't, you've been doing wonderful works with 5 Minutes of Faith. And anybody, if you haven't had a chance to check that out, please follow up on that. You'll be amazed at the many episodes that she's produced in that regard, and just the powerful, wonderful stories of overcoming life's challenges, and of course relying upon God to lead that effort. So Claudia, if you had a chance to talk to the younger version of you, you think back to the Claudia of 20, 30 years ago, that young girl who thought she had all the answers, had it all figured out. She knew exactly what was what and how it was going to happen. And now you reflect now on your experiences, your maturity, your growth, on so many levels. What would be those words of wisdom or those words of encouragement that you would have for her, or somebody who may be like her, that was once maybe having some of the challenges that you used to have, struggles that you used to have? What would be those words of encouragement that you would like to share?
You know what? I feel, uh, first thing I would say is to, you can't really give yourself confidence, right? But you can certainly believe in yourself. I don't know that I believed in myself when I was younger. And so as a result of me not believing in myself, I accepted other people's perceptions or what they thought of my capabilities to be what I accepted.
Hmm.
That was so dangerous. Uh, because there's so many people, especially depending on the origins of your surroundings, people can speak a blessing or a curse over you. And so if there are people that are speaking things over you that don't fit God's plan for your life or God's purpose for your life, then it could be to your detriment and could cause you to completely fall. And I think that was what was happening to me as I was surrounded by people who were toxic, and they were telling me things that I believed, as opposed to me knowing who I was in Christ and believing and pursuing that version of myself. So I used to feel as though that it I'm at a place that I feel to be a healthy place, and I just wonder if I would have gotten the revelation that God had for me many years sooner, how much further might I be? And
Mm.
maybe I'm not supposed to be further. Maybe I'm supposed to be exactly where I am. But I just wonder if I would have gotten the revelation sooner, how much further would I have been? So if I could speak to my younger self, I would say the world has nothing to offer you. Accept God and follow him quickly and intentionally, because the life that you have in Christ is far greater than anything that you can imagine without him.
Love that. Love that. And I too, I relate to what you just said. I too have had that, ask myself that question. What if I would have, given my life to Christ sooner? What if I had, listened to him sooner instead of continuing to trying to do it my way or straddling the fence? What if? But the beauty about it though is, even like you said, sometimes we may not have been ready to do what we needed to do sooner. We weren't mature enough. We weren't where we needed to be. We didn't have those experiences that were necessary to have. And the God that we serve, even if we technically are a little bit behind schedule, He has the ability to catch us up with whatever we already should have had by now. So it's not like
Yeah.
it's not like it's forever lost. just because, I waited until this age and when I should have did it 10 years sooner or what have you. So that's wonderful to know that as well. So, but I love that perspective and approach, and I totally agree with you in that regard. So, Claudia, it has been a thrill and a pleasure having you on the podcast, sharing your story. What a powerful story. What a powerful journey. I know people have been blessed. But of course, as is customary on the show here, before I let you go, we want to have an opportunity to love on you, to celebrate you, to acknowledge you. If you got anything, announcements that you got, anything exciting coming up, going on that you want to make mention. It doesn't matter if it's business, personal related, or what have you. We want to again acknowledge that, love on you, celebrate you, let people know how they can connect with you if they're interested in any of your products or services that you have. Please do
Mm,
share any of that so we can we can love and celebrate you.
sure. I am an author. So if you're interested in hearing my full testimony, I have a book called Becoming a Mother While Losing My Own. You can find that on Amazon or any of the places that sell digital books. Look it up, Becoming a Mother While Losing My Own. I just found out that my film, Rarely Have You Seen a Fox Like This, is going to be screening at the Black Girls Rock Film Festival this summer. I'm really excited to for that opportunity, and that is a big deal because we all know that Black Girls Rock is a huge reputable platform, and it is not easy for your films to be selected to get screened in these festivals. So it is an extraordinary honor that I absolutely cannot wait to experience.
That is awesome. Again, congrats on that. I'm excited and happy for you. Looking forward to your film, making it on that platform and even going bigger than that. One day we might see the commercial coming soon to theaters near you. You know,
Right.
um, like I said, you are definitely a gifted woman of God. So much beautiful works that you're doing, and you're just still scratching the surface as far as I'm concerned. There's so much more that God has in store for you. And so just again, continue to lean on him as you have been for that strength, for that drive, for that determination, for that walking in your purpose that he's created in you to do. And just, set the world on fire with all that you have gifted inside of you to do. So it has been a privilege and an honor to just know my sister-in-law, even on another level. Just gave me just a whole nother level of respect and admiration for who you are and what you represent, you and the entire family. So thank you so much for being a part of the show. And for my listeners, if you've enjoyed today's podcast, if you've been blessed by it, encouraged by it, please subscribe, share, like, comment, because here at the Blessings in the Streets podcast, this is what it's all about: inspiring, uplifting, encouraging, letting you know that no matter what level of adversity you find yourself up against, that is not the end of your story. It's just a part of the journey, it's a part of the process that we have to go through to get to that ultimate other side of that storm, coming out of it stronger, better, wiser, and better as a result of it. God doesn't allow these storms to cross our path to hurt us or to harm us. It's to develop us, it's to grow us, it's to build a closer bond and loving relationship between Him and us. That's what He wants. That's what He desires for us. And we need to embrace it. I'm not telling you something that I heard, I'm telling you something that I know, something that Claudia knows. It'll be the best decision that you ever make in life if you have not already made that. So, with that said, here at the Blessings in the Streets podcast, remember, this is the place where your story is your glory, where your relationships are relevant, and your journey is your joy. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts. Thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, you keep fighting that good fight, keep persevering, keep leaning on God for that direction, for that understanding. Let Him be your guide. I promise you, He will not steer you wrong. I'll see you next time. Check you later.